my dear listeners. It seems like we're having a bit of a hiccup with our music here. But I guess for now we can just start a little early. So, let's see. I have to find all my papers and all that. I was not expecting because I was trying to get last minute set up. But as you know, you've tuned into the frequency where reality slips into fiction and truth wears a mask. It's just past the hour, and I've got stories to share. Some whispers, some howled, and all unforgettable. So fix yourself a drink, dim the lights, and listen closely. We are live. Now, to start off tonight's broadcast, I'm gonna actually tell one of my stories, one of my own that I've actually experienced. This was probably like a decade ago. And it is quite something I do remember very, not fondly, but also very vividly. I remember it, not fond of it, but I still remember it to this day. Probably I'm missing some details because, again, a decade ago or so, it is quite old, and since then, I've not experienced anything of the sort. So, this story takes place, let's see, not to give away locations, but let's just say somewhere in the mountains. I used to go to my grandparents a lot that lived in the mountains for quite a while. And over the years, we would, I'm trying to be careful with my wording, not to give away too many things about them. But let's just say where they lived in the mountains, it was pretty dense woodlands. There wasn't much to, see. There wasn't really any civilization around the area. So there's not really much I can say, I guess. But that, again, it's probably changed. It probably doesn't look the same at all. So I could probably say where it's at. Nobody would probably know where it's at this point. Anyways, to get on to with my story or my experience. And this was only a one-time thing. And this was probably because being young at the time, I didn't really know what could have been, what it was. I still don't know. And it comes to mind every once in a while. I try to overthink it, but I still don't know to this day. Anyways, what I do know of, or what I remember of this event, was that while I was there, it was family and I. We went up there, and we stayed a couple of nights. The first several nights were pretty, normal, I guess, in the sense of living in the mountains, even though there wasn't really much to do at the time. But on my third night, I actually got to sit. My grandpa and I sat outside just to kind of enjoy the night sky because you can really see the stars and stuff like that in the mountains. And we sat out there for a bit, and something caught my attention, and I don't fully remember all the details of this, so I could be remembering some of this wrong or over-exaggerating just to kind of fill in a little bit of the story. But I remember we sat out there, and keep in mind that, again, living in the dense of woods in the mountains, it could have probably been like bears or something, and we wouldn't know. But while being young, your imagination goes wild each time something like that happens. But I heard rustling. I remember very well that there was rustling you could hear in the woods, and at first it sounded like, oh, maybe it's a deer, because that was very common to see living in the mountains. But the more I thought about it, or I probably thought about it at the time, it did not really sound like a deer, and it didn't sound like a bear either. And I guess what ran through my mind is that it could have been anything. And of course, my grandparents always, told me stories, scary stories, horror stories, whatever you want to go with while I was younger. So my mind's probably just going haywire at this point in my life when being that young and you telling me ghost stories and whatnot about the area. But the rustling really caught me off, I didn't know what to actually think of it. Just that when my grandparents tell me stories, it freaked me out. I just know that much. But when we went inside that night to actually actually go to bed, I remember hearing something nearby because where they lived, you could actually hear pretty much on the outside. Like it was very thin walls, so you could really hear stuff outside. And what what I heard was sounds like someone was walking around or something was walking around the house. I didn't want to check outside because I didn't want to know what was out there. If I mm, just even remembering it's kind of creepy because for the life of me, I never was being as young as I was at the time. I would never look outside the window or just anything outside. Since then, that's the only thing I remember. So there's not really much to the scary story because to me it was scary being young. But again, that was a decade ago, and I have very vague memories on it. So there's not really much else to tell besides that. We heard something that night, and around like an hour or two, I heard something else outside of the house, like near the window. Other than that, that's pretty much the short end of that. This wasn't really much scarier than that. Since then, I never heard of it again. I never heard it again. I would, of course, seen deer and stuff. But that was my short take on my own experience. I don't really have a lot of my own experiences myself, so there's really not much to tell about it. So, I guess that's the end for one story for tonight. Let's jump on to the next. I guess actual stories that actually are better than mine. Let's see. Let me make sure. Okay. So we have one submitted by someone named LR, and I guess that's really just the name. And yeah, LR. That's it. Okay. Now, from what I understand from skimming through this bit of story is that this is a alien visitation or alien visiting or some little gray man visiting. Let's see. Where do we want to start? So I'm doing a quick scan to make sure this is the right one. Yes, it is. So supposedly this happened 6 months ago in the middle of nowhere, Oregon. So almost kind of like living out pretty much anything and everything outside in the middle of nowhere. Something's always going to happen. I guess that's just hotspots for paranormal or creepy stuff. Anyways, I just inherited a cabin from my uncle, scheduled or secluded. Okay, sorry, I was trying to fix my glasses here. Miles from the nearest paved road, I took a few days off work to go clean up the place and maybe get a little peace. I figured I'd chop some firewood, drink some coffee on the porch, and enjoy being completely disconnected from the rest of the world. Don't we all? I think everybody once in a while needs some kind of disconnection from the world, no matter what. Anyways, the first day was normal, peaceful. The trees were tall, the air was clean, and the only sounds were the wind and the occasional birds. But that night, things started to get weird. I went around to bed around 11. The cabin's got no Wi-Fi, no TV, nothing digital. Just an old battery-powered radio. Oh Lord, that's just something I remember, and I could probably get behind. And a clock that ticks too loudly, which is the one almost like what you guys hear now. I was lying in bed just about to drift off when I heard this humming. Not mechanical, not electrical. It was a low, deep, like a sound you feel in your chest more than you hear with your ears. I thought it might be the wind through the trees, until the radio on the shelf crackled to life. I hadn't touched it. The volume turned up on all on its own, full blast. But it wasn't playing music or a station. It was just static. I got up and turned to turn it off, thinking maybe the batteries were dying or the dial got bumped. But the moment I touched it, the static stopped, and a voice came through. Not like a voice like yours or mine. Not even like a disoriented human voice. It was just wrong. Too deep, too layered. Like 10 people whispering at the same time in a language I never heard. I guess my 2 cents on that is that why would you bother? Like even though I would hate to have this happen to it, but destroy the radio. Oh well. Never heard, then it cut out completely. At that point, I was freaked out. I chalked it up to being overtired. I left the radio on the table and went back to bed. That's when I saw the light. It wasn't lightning, and it sure as hell wasn't a plane. Through the window above my bed, the sky lit up in a blinding blue glow. Steady, not flashing, and silent. I sat up and watched it for a few seconds, trying to convince myself it was a weird cloud reflection. Or maybe the northern lights. Though those don't show up around here. But then it moved. The light dropped lower, slow and deliberate behind the tree line. Curiosity overrode fear. I threw on boots and a jacket and stepped outside. The glow was coming from just beyond the tree line behind the cabin. I grabbed out my flashlight and headed into the woods. It took me 10 minutes to reach a clearing. There, hovering, some looks like we got some typos or I just could not speak English today. Silently above the ground was a black oval-shaped craft. It wasn't huge, maybe the size of a camper van, but it made no sound. The blue light was coming from underneath it, bathing the trees and the grass in an eerie glow. Everything felt wrong. The air felt like ozone, and the moment I stepped closer, my flashlight shorted out. Then I heard something behind me. I turned around and saw nothing at first, but then out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. Something tall and impossibly thin, standing in the trees. Its skin was gray, almost translucent, and its eyes. The eyes were huge and completely black, not reflective, just absorbing light. It didn't move right, like it didn't understand how walking worked. It stepped forward, slow and twitchy, like a puppet on strings. And then I heard that voice again, not from the radio this time, but directly in my head. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My entire body locked up, my chest hurt like I couldn't breathe, and there was a ringing in my ears that grew louder and louder until I thought my skull would split. Then the light flared, brighter than ever, and I blacked out. I woke up lying in the middle of the clearing. The craft was gone. The sky was still dark, but I could tell the sun would rise soon. My watch had stopped, my phone was completely dead, and I had a sharp burning pain in the back of my neck. When I got back to the cabin, I looked in the bathroom mirror and saw 3 circular marks, like burns lined up in a triangle. They didn't hurt like a normal burn. They felt deep, numb. I drove home that morning and didn't say a word to anyone. For days I didn't sleep. I started seeing shadows in the corner of my eyes. My dog Benny wouldn't come near me. He used to sleep in my bed every night, but now he just growls and hides under the couch when I walk by. Sometimes I still hear the humming. It comes when I'm alone, just before I fall asleep. Sometimes the TV turns itself on to static, even when it's unplugged. Sometimes I find dirt on the floor in the morning, like someone walked barefoot through my house at night. Okay, my 2 cents on this story is that I have not really. I find outer space interesting. It's scary, just because it's unknown. The unknown is, of course, my theme. I guess you could say is my stitch or stick or whatever you want to call it. It has been a long day, everybody, so I may not be my mostly joyous self like I usually do. But I think I still have I have energy enough for today. Anyways, my 2 cents on it is that there is a lot of stories on situations like that happening. Everybody not everybody, but those that have experienced such things are very rare, even though they sound very, very common. What I have to say is that if there is something out there like that, let's hope it's friendly. I don't think we want to deal with something that's much more highly advanced than we are. Now, let's see. Since we started a little early, and because of some mechanical goblins again, yeah, they're messing with my machines and whatnot. This is why machinery is just so unreliable. Technology. Anyways, the next story we have is submitted by R.A. from Pennsylvania. And this one looks like it is a haunted hospital that they've explored in the past. The place had been shut. Okay, wait, hold on. Looks like there's. Okay, no, I just skipped a little bit. Okay, my bad. I've been through crumbling schools, empty malls, and collapsed factories. But the one place that made me want to quit for good was Rye Hill State Hospital. Rye Hill. Why does it sound familiar? Probably seen it in the paper somewhere. The place had been shuttered since the early 1980s, left to rot on the outskirts of town. You know, the kind of ivory-covered brick, busted windows, the words "help me" and "get out" scrawled in red paint on every other wall. Typical abandoned place, except it didn't feel typical. Not at all. The day we went in, it was me, my buddy Marcus, and our friend Jules. We had flashlights, extra batteries, snacks, like we were preparing for a casual hike. We even laughed as we climbed the fence. We were idiots. Rye Hill used to be a psychiatric hospital. Ooh. That says a lot right there. No wonder why you guys were idiots. Yeah. Empty hallways, rooms with rusted bed frames bolted to the floors, wheelchairs left like someone had just stood up and walked away. It was eerily quiet, like the building was holding its breath. The deeper we went, the more wrong it felt. On the second floor, we found what looked like a record room. Papers were scattered everywhere, soaked and rotted. I picked one up. It was a patient's log. Nothing weird at first, until we saw the date of the last discharge listed as unknown, never released. Now, I do know some of that. Is that most of the time that is due to some patients passing away. That probably why they would probably write down never released, because they passed away in that place to begin with. Anyways, there were dozens of those, all from a wing we haven't found yet, Ward C. We never heard of Ward C. The map near the entrance only showed Ward A and B. That's when we heard footsteps, not ours. Heavy, dragging footsteps down the hallway behind us. We froze. Marcus turned off his flashlight. Everything went black. Steps got closer and stopped. Just as suddenly we heard a door slam from somewhere below us. Instead of heading back to the way we came, we stupidly bolted down a nearby staircase and ended up in the basement, where the air was colder, damper. It felt like the walls were closing in. And then we saw it, a rusty steel door marked Ward C. It looked out of place, newer from the rest of the building, like someone had sealed it long after the hospital shut down. And it was open. We should have turned around, but Jules said, let's just go look. One hallway, then we go. Famous last words, of course, but that's everybody. Everybody has famous last words before they do something stupid. This was just up there in stupidity. Anyways, inside the walls were painted the sickly pale green. There was no windows, just narrow, endless corridors and closed doors. At first we thought it was just more of the same old rooms and patient beds. But the deeper we went, the more things changed. One room still had power, a single overhead light flickering on and off. Inside was a metal chair with restraint, and the walls were covered in scratch marks. Actual claw marks dug deep in the plaster. Another room had a mirror completely shattered from the inside. Something had hit. Hold on. Looks like I'm having a little bit of typo here. What's going on? Something? No, okay, no. I am just reading it wrong. Had messed with my glasses for a second. Something had hit it hard enough to crack every inch of it. Then we heard the screaming. It was faint at first, echoing from somewhere deeper. A woman's voice. But it didn't sound real. It looped like a recording. Screaming, silence, screaming again, same pitch, same duration, over and over. We followed it like idiots. Our flashlights dimmed the further we went, even though the batteries were fresh. And then we hit the tunnels. There was a staircase leading beneath Ward C. Dirty walls, low ceilings, pipes hissing with steam. It looked like an old maintenance corridor, but something smelled awful down there, like rotten ammonia. That's when we saw them. Handprints all over the walls, bloody. Some small like child's, others long and skeletal. One of them smeared across the wall like someone had been dragged. Jules threw up. Marcus said we needed to leave now, but it was already too late. The lights went out, pitch black. We heard someone walking behind us, like bare feet on stone. Shaky, wheezing breathing right behind us. We ran, groping in the dark, slamming into walls and in each other. I tripped. I swear I felt a hand grab my ankle, cold and thin. We didn't stop running until we burst back into the main building, through the stairway, and out into the daylight. It's only 3 p.m., but it felt like we'd been inside for hours. The kicker? When we went back to check the map near the entrance, there was no basement listed, no Ward C, just A and B like we thought. We tried to go back a week later. The place had been sealed up. The construction crew was there putting up fencing and warning signs. One guy told us the hospital has been scheduled for demolition, some kind of hazardous containment issue in the lower levels. He wouldn't say more. Marcus doesn't talk about it. Jules won't go into another abandoned building. Me, I haven't stopped dreaming about the hallway. That's it. That's creepy. But almost sounds, because let's hypothetically say that the hazardous containment issue is probably something that is, not good for you to breathe in or something along those lines. Like it probably, wasn't good for you mentally. So, let's see. Last one of tonight. This one is actually different. It's a murder mystery this time. One of the first murder mysteries I've had yet, which is going to be interesting, but it's by an unknown. And it's from a place called Blackwater Cove, Maine. Now, the way they done this, they did it in like a journal pages almost. So, it's going to be a little different because it has dates and yeah, it's just dates. Yeah? Okay. And it starts June 3rd. Okay, so this is not saying the year, which I don't blame him. Like, better keep some stuff to yourself. Anyways, I came to Blackwater Cove to get away from the noise. 1 week alone in the old lighthouse on the edge of the cliff. It's been abandoned for years, but I got special permission from the historical society to stay there. Said I was researching for a novel. Truth is, I needed the silence. The city's been eating me alive. No one here but me, the gulls, and the sea. But when I arrived, the door in the lighthouse wasn't locked. June 4th. The inside's in better shape than I expected. Dusty, sure. Some broken floorboards, but no graffiti. No signs of squatters. Except there was a teacup on the kitchen counter. Clean, not mine. I convinced myself it was from a previous caretaker. But that's a hard story to swallow when I found fresh, muddy footprints on the stairs to the light tower tonight. Just one set, too big to be mine. I should leave, but the storm rolled in this morning and the roads flooded. No cell service out here. I spent the day reading through the old logbooks in the lantern room. The last entries are from 1962. The keeper named Ellis. His writings became more erratic toward the end, talking about someone named Jonah, who won't stop staring, and how the foregone whispers at night. Foghorn whisper. Foghorn. Okay. Last entry just says, I buried Jonah under the stairs. Ew. June 6th. I didn't sleep. Whoa. So it went from June 4th to June 6th. Interesting. I didn't sleep. Something kept walking past my bedroom all night. Slow, deliberate. This morning I opened the crawl space beneath the stairs. There was nothing there. But I know what I heard. And when I went back to the kitchen, there was now 2 teacups on the counter. I found a hidden drawer in the base of the lighthouse keeper's desk. Inside was a bundle of letters tied in a twine, all addressed to someone named Jonah Mercer. The last one wasn't sent. It was stained with something dark, maybe blood. It read, "You were right. He's dangerous. I'm sorry I told him. I think Ellis killed Jonah, but someone's still in this house." I set up an old tape recorder in the hallway overnight, played it back this morning at exactly 3:12 a.m. There's the sound of creaking wood, footsteps, then a voice. Low, gravelly, but clear. "You should have come here." That wasn't my voice. I don't recognize it. And now the tape is gone. June 9th. I found a photograph tucked inside of one of the logbooks. It's a black and white portrait of 2 men. One tall, lanky, wearing a lighthousekeeper's uniform. The other, shorter, smiling. On the back is labeled Ellis and Jonah, 1959. Before what? That night I finally saw him. A man standing at the edge of the cliff, right outside the lighthouse window. Pale, thin, his jaw was missing. And he was holding my tape recorder. June 10th. I woke up with mud on my hands. I think I've been sleepwalking, or someone's been dragging me out of bed. Either way, I don't trust myself anymore. I'm ending this. I went down to the base of the stairs with a shovel, dug until my hands bled. I found it. A skeleton curled in on itself, wearing a rusted name tag. Jonah Mercer. I called the sheriff's office from the landline. They said they'd send someone out, but it's nearly midnight and no one came. Except Jonah. He's standing outside the window again, smiling. And this one's a little this one is not dated, but it just says postscript. When police finally arrived at Blackwater Cove, they found the lighthouse completely undisturbed. Except for the series of journal pages half burnt in the fireplace, no body was recovered from beneath the stairs. No one named Jonah Mercer ever worked for the lighthouse service, and landlines has been disconnected for over 40 years. Now that one actually gave me a little bit of chills. That's actually quite creepy. Huh. I guess my final thoughts on that is that I like murder mysteries are actually quite interesting. It's just a little creepy on that side though, because finding out that something like that is probably hidden under you this whole time is never good. Like that's always one of those creepy moments of like, I hope that's not the case anywhere near me. But I think these were some good stories. Mine wasn't as good. Mine was also a little, vague because I barely remember it after a decade. Well, of course, I don't really try to think about it as much. I try to think about what's going on now, mostly, or probably the future of what this world entails or holds for us later on in life. And of course, we always get new mysteries, new stories, new horrors that we have outside in the world that nobody's ever seen, found, or some experienced and just haven't told their story. But that's it for tonight. And with that, dear listeners, the hours grow late and the shadows grow long. Our journey through tonight's tales come to a close. But fear not, for we'll return soon enough with more whispers from the dark and stories to stir the soul. So until we meet again, keep your lights low, your minds open, and your hearts brave. This is your host signing off, wishing you a restful night, and dreams free of things we've spoken of. Good night, folks, and sleep tight.
Today, just discovered. We'll say goodbye.